Welcome to my podcast, Shaping Your Journey. My name is Aldo Mazza, percussionist, drummer, and artistic director of Cosa Music, inviting you to listen in conversation with friends, artists, professionals, and experts in our music world. And don't forget to subscribe so you may receive notices of upcoming and interesting conversations in Shaping Your Journey. Today, I have the great honor and pleasure of having my very good friend, very long-time friend, and we'll get into that a little bit later, the one and only Mike Balter. Thank you so much, Mike. Mike or Michael? I know you as Mike, but...
Outside of the business, I'm Michael, but in the business, I thought Michael Balter Mallets would be a little long, so I changed it to Mike.
Okay.
So... But it's, everyone calls me Michael.
Okay, I'll call you Mike. But so before we get into the conversation of shaping your journey, and you certainly had a really interesting one and productive one, I want you to just share with us, where did it start for you? The very, very beginning. What was that spark? What was that fire that got it going for you?
Well, it's kind of a funny story in respect that I think it was like third grade, fourth grade, when the entire school takes a music aptitude test.
Okay.
So I had 100 on the music aptitude test. So the band director and my parents said, well, you should, you should take up an instrument. So my father saying maybe trumpet, my mother saying maybe saxophone or trombone or something. And well, I don't know, maybe. So the band director is demonstrating all the instruments. Still can't make up my mind, and it's Friday, and the band director says to the whole class, you have to let us know by Monday morning which instrument you want to play. Saturday, can't decide. Sunday, kind of can't decide. Well, at that time, the American family on Sunday evenings used to watch a variety show known as the Ed Sullivan Show. And who was the musical guest on the Ed Sullivan Show? Gene Krupa.
Okay.
Right then and there, I knew exactly what I wanted to play. I wanted to play drums. So I go in Monday morning and I tell the band director, I want to play drums. He says, great. So a week later, all the instruments come in, the flute, and he's got them set up on a table, the flutes, the saxophone, the trombones, the trumpets, everything is, flutes, everything is laid out. And he's calling everybody up one by one, but I don't see my drum set, so I'm figuring going on. And I'm like one of the last to be called. I says, oh, this is going to be great. They're going to open up the curtain and there's going to be my drum set. So the band director calls my name, and what does he do? He hands me a piece of wood with a piece of rubber on top of it. He says, here's your practice pad, and here are your sticks. And I'm expecting this big drum set. So needless to say, that's where it all started.
Wow. How long did you stay on the pad?
Maybe about 6 months, I want to say. And then I got a snare drum. And then after a year, the band director said, I think you should start taking private lessons with a actual drum teacher. So it just blossomed into all of that. And it just got heavier and heavier. And then, sixth grade, seventh grade. But then when I got to high school, there's another little funny story, let's say, that I can laugh about it now because as I look back, I couldn't believe how arrogant I was going into high school, musically arrogant, not in social settings. But what happened was I was trying out for the football team, the freshman football team. I made first string tackle. So I'm going to be a football player, right? So the first day of band, and this is the freshman band, I'm playing everything one-handed. I mean, it wasn't challenging for me. I didn't feel inspired. And so the band director is explaining the high school band director, is explaining how we're going to have challenges and how you can, let's say, move up a chair, to become first chair. So after the first day freshman, I say to the band director that I want to challenge the drummer in the varsity band, the senior. I want to challenge him. The band director says, "Do you know him?" I said no, but I know I can play better than him. Again, why I was so arrogant back then. So I would end up. He says, "Okay." He gives me a pass that he wanted to show me and put me in my place. So he gives me a pass for the next day to come in when the varsity band is meeting and challenge the first chair drummer. And what they would do, they would put the challenger and the first chair in front of the whole band, and the band would decide. So we're playing, different marches, different symphonic things, drum set with the jazz band and all that. And the band voted me as first chair player, never having a freshman playing in varsity. So I go there and I said, "This is great." And so then the band director says, "Congratulations, I'll see you at 3:00. He said, "What do you mean you'll see me at 3:00? I can't, whatever it is, I can't make it. I have football practice." He says, "No, you're first chair drummer. You have to teach the rest of the section all the cadences and everything, because the varsity band plays at the football games." So needless to say, that was the end of my football career. So
Nice.
I ended up doing all that. And as you say, it was a strange but rewarding journey. And
Nice.
that's how my journey started.
And then you went to university after that?
Yeah, then I at the time, another part of a funny story, when I was it was recommended to me when I was like a freshman that I should go study with this guy downtown and his name was Roy Knapp. And here you are,
Oh.
14, what was it, young, and and what happens is, why would I want to go study with this old guy, So then what happened is, knowing that who he taught, about 18 months later, my parents took me to the London house, and who was there was Gene Krupa and his quartet. And so
Wow.
we're just thinking, and I look over, and what happened is my father, it's actually my aunt who knew the maitre d', got us literally, I could touch Gene's bass drum. We were the first table right in front of Gene, and they're playing different things. And all of a sudden I look over to my mother and I said, "I can do everything this guy's doing." And then all of a sudden, wham, big rim shot. And those spotlights that he would use came up on him. And I'm looking up. And about a minute later, my mother leans forward. She says, "Michael, close your mouth." Because I was like, "Oh," And so it was going on. And then after the hour set, Gene came and sat at our table. And
Wow.
he talked to us. He talked to us for the full 45 minutes. And there were all these people coming over who I didn't know who they were at the time. Later, I knew them personally and met them and all that through my business. But it was like Roy Burns came over, Joe Casadas, and a couple of others, come over to saying, "Gee," but he was talking to me, and certain things he would say to me still resonate today. One of the things he said is that going to become number one is the easy part. Once you become number one, to stay number one, that's when the work starts. And that is something that I've always cherished, because as musicians, we have a lot of transfer of learning. So not only did I take that from a musical standpoint, when I went into the music business and became number one in mallet making, I remembered that saying, that you can never rest on your laurels. There's always somebody, trying to, take over your seat, let's say.
Yeah.
So, but they have Gene, and then later on, every time he recognized me, and we had a relationship, and would write to each other and different things. It was quite cherishing.
Beautiful.
So,
Beautiful.
so it was good, and then later on, besides, when we got back into the car after that gig of seeing Gene Krupa, I said to my mother, I says, I think we should call that guy downtown. I want to study with him. So I then had a personal relationship with Roy Knapp and studied with him, for years and years. And then I stayed in Chicago in order to continue to study with Roy. And I went to DePaul University for my undergraduate and graduate degree. And I got it in music education and performance. So it was good. And then Roy said that I was going to be his last star. And he had me go out to study with two of his students out in California. My parents would send me to California at least twice a year, and I studied with Louie Bellson
Oh, wow.
and with Lou Singer, and we became friends with with both. I became friends with both of them, and like if Louie come into town, sometimes he'd stay at the house, and stuff. So it was a personal journey that I cherish.
Wow, that's fantastic. I mean, to be able to be that close to such superstars. I mean, superstars. I mean, people who made the difference and really brought the craft to a level that I mean, we're still working off that today, right? I mean,
Right. And um, the more what I have found that the higher up they are in the musical um, industry, let's say, they're all humble people.
yeah,
I mean, I would call uh, Pearl and Louie. Pearl did not like the LA scene. So even though she had her own TV show, which was taped and done on Thursdays, Friday they would go to Lake Havasu City, Arizona, and they have a house out there, and then fly back to do the next week's show. So it was around Christmas time one year, and I call uh, out to wish them a happy holidays, a Merry Christmas, and everything, and to show you how down to earth a Louie Bellson is. Pearl answers the phone and she says, Michael, is that you? I said, yes, I'm calling to wish you and Louie a very happy anniversary, happy New Year, and nothing but good things and good health. And so she says, I'd like to talk to you, but I can't because I'm making Louie's favorite lunch. I'm making homemade macaroni and cheese, but let me go get him. He's outside washing the windows.
I mean, Louis Bellson, I met him once. And I mean, I would cross paths with him at PASIC or the NAM show or things like that. But I was at a camp once and he came with his big band. And I was just so floored by his playing. First of all, I'd never seen somebody play with such dynamics. And you have the whole band like in super pianissimo and with intensity. I had never seen that. And then to meet him as on the human level, he was such a nice person. And I remember this. He says, "Can I give you some advice?" Because I was asking him technical things. He says, "But let me give you some other advice that I think would be good." And you look like the kind of person who would understand this. Never say anything bad about anybody. Just stay on the right track. Stay on your track. Just do what you got to do. Do it best. And the negative stuff, don't even entertain it. Don't even think about it. And I thought, wow, what a way to think. And that's the way it should be. And so I've tried to do it as much as possible all my life, just because it works. It works. It's the negative stuff just weighs you
And
down.
and that's the way he would be. He wouldn't say anything negative because uh, music is, a positive thing, and he said
Yeah.
keep doing it. And like even when I was taking lessons with him, he would say, he says, here are your drums. He says, talk to me. So I'm turning and I'm trying to, say something. He said, no, talk to me through the drums.
Ah,
You know, what,
nice.
in other words, what do you have to say, musically? And he would say that here are your letters, let's say cymbal sounds, tom toms, or whatever. These are the letters. Now put the letters together to make a word, and put the words together to make a sentence, and and then tell your story. And when you approach it like that, musically, you start thinking, you think musically, not rudimentally, let's say. If you have the chops, then it's a question of executing something. And then one of the other things he would have me do, which again is one of those things that helped mold me into the player that I was, is that whatever I would play, he says, okay, now write it down, which a lot of people can play something much more rudimental and challenging, but once they see it, it's not making sense to them. So he wanted that I, hand coordination to be, everything, so that you can, actually play, write down what you're playing. And there are so many people who cannot do that. They play it wonderfully, but they can't write it down.
That's a
So
great approach. I'd never heard that before. Really, I'm just thinking in my mind, if you can write down what you just played, I mean, it would be the same thing as what you say something and then you can write it down. But to
correct.
play it, what a great approach.
Because he says then you approach it musically, as opposed to just rudimentally, and that's what, like you were saying, how he had control of the band or the
Oh yeah.
orchestra, is because he approached things from that standpoint. And the fact that he was able to do that and become a composer arranger, he just approached life even from a musical standpoint.
Yeah. And I heard, I mean, he helped a lot of people that I know when you speak to them. And that whole idea of, one of fulfilling your own purpose is like helping others, like helping a situation, being helpful. What can you do to resolve something? Always being part of the solution. That whole way of living, not just in life, but in musically speaking, because then you have to give room. It's like I remember when I was doing a lot of TV shows, a lot of recording, and at one point I was doing less of that. And then people would say, "Aldo, what are you doing now?" I said, I'm doing something else now. I'm still out there playing. But now I'm pushing my own envelope because those guys who are doing the TV shows now, where they're not going to call me, they're going to call their friends like we did. So it's just a cycle. So you have to push everybody to be in their own space. So you have to get out of the way, but make way. Not just get out of the way, but make way. And if you're any kind of visionary, then you go to those edges, push that envelope, so that who's ever coming behind then has more territory. Right? I mean,
I
it's
mean,
the way.
a musician cannot rest on their laurels, and and a musician is only as good as their last performance. Because if you look at it, that I was a great hero, I saved the show last night, there's no guarantee you're going to do the same thing tonight.
Right.
Uh, I always approached a show, if I was doing Broadway, Broadway national touring companies or Broadway shows or playing with stars, every night was opening night, because everyone in the audience, it's the first time they're going to hear it. So you have to approach it as it's every night is opening night, and you got to be on your toes and do your best.
And you did a lot of those shows, right? I mean, you were
Oh,
first and foremost a player and playing all the shows in Chicago. I mean, the multiple percussionists.
and some of the acts would want me to go, on the road with them. And I went to L.A. and then I went to a couple other places, but I didn't like being on the road. It it was nice at the time, but I wanted to stay home. And yes, I was doing recordings and doing shows at the Schubert Theater and doing all the national touring companies of the shows, and but a lot of recording and club dates and doing other things. I was busy. I was doing 10, 10 sessions, gigs a week one time. And one time, which is what prompted me to start my own business, was at 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm doing a TV commercial for Sears. They have a new paint coming out. And so then they wanted to show how it was like down in Jamaica or something. So I'm playing marimba. And what happens is they want that authentic marimba sound. And I'm using at the time the Musser M1, the yellow rubber mallets,
Yeah, I
which were
remember.
the softest mallets made at the time. And the producer's saying, "No, I'm hearing too much click on the marimba. I don't want to hear that. I just want to hear the rumble, the rolls in the back." So then I go to the M8s, which was the same as an M1, but it was yarn covered.
Right.
And so then I started doing that. He says, "No, no, that's." So I said, "Wait, I have one other thing." So I go to the M9, which was the softest mallet commercially made at the time. He says, "No, that's still not the sound that I want. I want everything." He says, "Go back to the original ones." So I played it with the commercial with the original ones, and he was satisfied. And so what happens is that's 8 o'clock in the morning. The same day, I'm playing at a nightclub. At 8 o'clock at night, I'm playing marimba for Trini Lopez. And I'm using the M2s, which was the harder one. It was red, and I'm playing that. And Trini's like looking at me. He says, "Michael, more, 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 more." And I'm thinking, "Holy moly!" And then I was getting how much more can I play? How much louder can I play? So I switch over to the M3s, which were really kind of almost more for xylophone. And I'm playing a Musser M250 rosewood bars.
Ooh,
And he's
ouch.
playing more and more. I start playing the solo and everything. And I'm starting to dance some of the bars with the
Sure.
M3s.
Of
And
course.
and Jenny Lopez is in front of the audience. "Yeah, go, go, go!" And he's going on. And I said, "Oh, there is something wrong here. How could it be at 8 o'clock in the morning? I cannot play soft enough. 8 o'clock at night, I can't play hard enough." So I started experimenting and I started making my own mallets. Well, I'm playing the Empire Room, which was a supper club in Chicago at the Palmer House. And
Right.
I'm playing for a group, a singing group called the Letterman. The conductor comes up to me. He says, "How come when you play vibes, it doesn't sound like ball peen hammers on vibes? And the bells sound terrific. There's just a tone coming out of them. And even the timpani don't sound very percussive." So I said, "Well, I make my own mallets." He says, "Well, next week we're going to Vegas. I wish the percussionist sounded as good as you." So dummy me says, here's the mallets. Give them to the percussionist, and I will make myself another, set." I did. And so about 2 weeks later, I started getting calls from percussionists out in Vegas. "Hi, such and such told me, to give you a call because you're making mallets." I said, "No, I made mallets. I don't make them for myself." He said, "Well, can you make me a set?" Well, this happened 3, 4 times. And at the time, I'm working at Frank's drum shop.
Ah,
And I said to Maury, what was happening, what was going on. He says, "Okay, I'm going to do you a favor. I'm going to give you an order for 10 pair. I said, okay, I'll bring them in on Saturday. Bring him in on Saturday. The following Wednesday, Maury says to me, Michael, bring me in 10 pair of mallets. I said, I did. I brought them in last Saturday. So Wednesday comes, and when he called, he says, I sold 7 out of the 10. I only have 3 pair left. And so then I said, I don't have the materials for them. So he says, Michael, you're either in the mallet business or you are not. So needless to say, I order
Wow.
some more materials, and I ordered, the minimum order was 2,000 pieces of rattan. Judy and I are living in a one-bedroom apartment in Chicago. Okay, she comes home from work one day, and on the kitchen table, I have 2,000 pieces of rattan. Okay, and she says, "What is that?" I said, "Maury ordered more mallets. How many did he order? 10 pair. Well, she knows that that's going to be 26 out of 2,000. Okay. She says to me, I hope you know what you are doing. And
Nice.
that was the start of Mike Balter Mallets, and it flourished. And over the years, she never asked if I knew what I was doing because she saw how successful it was
Oof.
and how we were making mallets for all the other companies
Right. And
under their name.
yeah. No, and before I get to that, I want to back up a little bit just because a couple of things went by this conversation that I really want to bring in. And this is like super important because I've known you for a very long time and we've been connected without even knowing it, even before we met. And Roy Knapp, okay? I went to a Lidwig percussion camp, which was what got me going way, way back. And that's where I met Maury Leishon from Frank's Drum Shop. And we became like instant friends. And so Roy Knapp came into one of the classrooms. So I met Roy Knapp just briefly like that. And then I learned who he was. And, we were all in awe. And I was sitting in a class with Gary Burton and Thomas, I can't
Tom
remember.
Davis?
Tom Davis. Tom Davis was there. Was also Bobby Christian was there. Joe Morello was there. It was just a phenomenal camp, which was like my rocket. There was the engines on my rocket that launched me at that point. But with Maury, I mean, there are a lot of histories with Maury. Maury was a player himself, but he and his wife, when they took over Frank's Drum Shop, they made it the center of the universe. And everybody, after this camp, I went to the shop. I was there 2, 3 days, and I'm there watching people come in and out, all of these great drummers. And it was the hang. I had never seen so many instruments in one place. And just their whole vibe. I mean, I had learned so much just from the camp, but then learning so much watching those two, they became like almost my second parents. I mean, that was
Oh,
not a joke.
absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
and then the story when at one point I said to Maury, he had taken us out to dinner. There was a few students who were there, took us out to dinner. The next day, I'm there just before leaving, and I said, Maury, I really want to buy an M55. Those vibes right there, but I don't have the money. I don't know. You know the story. And of course, you know what he did. Like, he did that to many people. So he just looked at me and says, Aldo, take the vibes, pay me when you get the money. And I was just so floored that it changed me forever. That whole that whole thing. Of course, when I got home, felt so guilty that I sold a lot of things. And then I used to buy all my parts, everything from him from then on, everything I could. I mean, he was just the channel for everybody, a lot of people. So
Absolutely. And By the way, do you remember what year the camp was?
73.
73. Oh, I was at 68 and 69.
Wow.
My first vibe lesson was with Gary Burton.
Me, me too. He showed me how to hold the mallets. I mean, I couldn't
Right.
play four mallets. So when he showed me, and I was a rock drummer who had discovered jazz, discovered classical music, and I really wanted to do this, but I didn't know who to go to. So I was at that camp, right? And it just floored me how many of all those great people would just open my eyes, and
Uh,
they
I was at the 68 camp, and drum wise, I was at the highest level. But mallet wise, I was just starting with Roy Knapp.
okay,
Um, because I was just 16. And so what happened is, um, so with mallet wise, with Roy, you do not start playing mallets until after 6 or 8 months because you have to know how to read music and get the harmonies down. He would have you write out these exercises
wow,
of first open position, closed position, and all that. So what happened is the first time I was in the beginning ensemble with
okay,
Dwayne Tham, who was the teacher. And so he says, no, not Dwayne Tham, Jim Suri was the teacher.
okay,
And so he says, who can read music? So I raised my hand. I could read it, but so the ensemble is playing, we're playing Gordon Peters' arrangement of Greensleeves
okay,
for marimba ensemble. And we were playing the students played a concert on Thursday night because on Friday night was Dick Shorey and the Percussion Pops, their concert. So I'm playing the lead, I'm playing the solo part for this. And so it's only two mallets. So I'm playing during the concert. And afterwards, Bill Ludwig Jr. and Dick Shorey come up to me. And Bill Ludwig Jr. says to me, hey, kid, you have such a beautiful role on marimba because it was just two mallets and everything. And he says, how long have you been playing? Well, I didn't want to lie to the guy. I said, since Monday. He turns to Dick Shorey and says, damn, we're better than I thought we were. True story. He says, how long you been playing? Since Monday. So,
that's fantastic. I mean, it must have been incredible in Chicago in those days with characters like that, Bill Ludwig and
oh,
more. I
yeah.
mean, everybody must have
And
been.
like Roy would want to go see his friend Senior, Bill Ludwig Senior. So I would pick Roy up. We would go to the factory, and I'm hanging out and with Bill Ludwig Jr. and we became dear, dear friends.
Nice, nice. And then so when getting back to when you started the company, and by the way, I mean I always coming to see you at the shows and all the new stuff you would always have. You were like so ahead of everybody all the time, and I'd walk into you, run into you all the time because I mean, we were an endorser myself,
Right.
repercussion, and then so we had that same problem because the guys are maniacs. When we were playing, we had to have we were such sticklers about the sound, about the everything we did. So every sound check we did lasted about an hour and a half because we would go through everything. We tuned the hall to ourselves, our what mallets we brought. So we'd have like 5,000 mallets that we had to travel with to get it always right. But fortunately, you were there, and then you would always come up with something new. And I'd come back and I'd say, guys, Mike's got these. Let's try these. It was
They were
crazy.
better because the instruments were playing and the music was changing at the
Yeah.
time. It wasn't uh, the old routine and that you knew what it was going to be and all that. So people were experimenting. And one thing about musicians, every day you learn something new.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, uh, in many ways, a professional musician is also a professional student.
Yeah.
You're you're a student your entire life.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. I'm still practicing. I'm still learning. I still feel like a kid, which is
Right.
nice. I mean, especially, I mean, I look at, the background with the timpani and the xylophone and the vibes. And, to me, that it always feels like home. It's like like a playpen.
Right. So I pride myself in my music studio, let's say, and
Nice.
it's nice because you're always trying to move those boundaries. And um, one of those other tidbits that Louis would say, if you go to practice and you're playing something that you already know, are you practicing or are you playing?
That's right. That's right.
And stuff. And it was funny because once I retired, I went down to the studio and I'm looking at all these old books and things that I have. So I started pulling some of them out. Like one of them was the Goldenberg xylophone book, the mallet book.
Yes.
And I'm
Yes.
thinking to
Yes.
myself, well, if I sight read this 30 years ago and I do it now, is it still sight reading?
Mm.
Because if you haven't played something in 30 years and you don't, an exercise or whatever, and you're looking at it and well, is this sight reading? Or if I've done it before, how could it be sight reading?
No, no, you're right.
So,
Well, I think if you haven't played for a long time, I think that's rereading. So you're almost sight
right.
reading again, right?
And so it was like one of those questions I asked myself, but it was like, this is very strange because like I should know this. I know this. Do I know this? Have I played it? Which I knew I did because I could see the markings in the book from lessons and stuff.
Right.
But it was good, and um, those are the types of things that I try to tell students when I like do master classes or something, because today's students are learn in a different way than we did, let's say.
Yeah.
We didn't have the YouTubes, we didn't have recordings as you have today. So we had to almost analyze things a little more and try to interpret it from the standpoint um, when you are playing something, you are not playing your story. The composer is telling the story. So you have to analyze what is the story that the composer wants to have you play and get out to the audience. So when you approach it that way, it's a little different. It's your interpretation of his story, maybe, but it's still
Right.
his story. And what does he want to say? And what happens is a lot of times, especially the last couple of times I've gone to PASIC, I'm a little disappointed because all these young students have chops like crazy. They have chops, but the question is, do they have the musicality?
Yeah.
And I said to somebody, in many ways, a lot of these students at PASIC today are like lead trumpet players. And the guy says to me, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Have you ever heard a lead trumpet player play pianissimo?" The answer is no. It's always forte or double forte,
Yeah.
and from that standpoint, and you can still have the technique, but you cannot lose the musicality.
No, that's
And
right.
and when I say to like some of the students is, what is your goal? Because they don't know, what direction they should be going in. And I would say to them, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And then they would tell me what it is. I says, now you know what to do. And they look at me like, what do you mean I know what to do? I said, here is your goal. You just set it, and it's not right or wrong. It's just that's the goal that you want to set for yourself. That if you want to play in an orchestra in 5 years, or you want to be teaching on the college level in 5 years, great. The question is, what has to fall into place in order for you to achieve your goal? And once you answer that question, then you know your action plan
That's right. That's right.
on what you have to do. And I think a lot of those types of things need to be um, taught on the college level from the standpoint um, we learn how to be in society from our parents or from being in school, but their parents what right from wrong and all that. But in music school, they also have to teach you. They should be preparing you for the next part of your journey. They should be preparing you for your musical life.
Yep. And what happens sometimes, I guess, Michael, is that we get so wrapped up, or they get so wrapped up in the challenge of things, the technicality of things, and everybody's such a lot of people now. Technically, they are so proficient. There's such a challenge, or people are challenged to play at that level. Otherwise, they won't be listened to. But then the smart people or the mature player then realizes the this technique or these chops or whatever you want to call it should only serve the music, and then some people get smart real fast, other get smart later when they realize at the end of the day what really matters is the music. The other stuff, the circus part of it, it's entertainment, or you need to get a certain technique, but if the music suffers, then that's you're not playing music. So
Correct. Correct.
yeah,
It's especially dynamics. That tension pull and push and pull.
right,
Uh, I think that's becoming a lost art. Uh, the audience sits there, but the um, better musicians can pull the audience into them
sure,
and have them feel it and become part of it and truly become emotional over the music. But if it's everything's at the same volume, and like you say, the dexterity and their proficiency of their chops is unbelievable.
sure, and then keeping it under control to make music with it. That's the challenge. But
Correct.
I wanted to ask you another question here, because I mean, you started making your own mallets because to fulfill a need that you had, which was actually a predecessor to what was coming, because there's a lot more demand for diverse sounds, diverse situations, and you were ahead of the pack. So you're making those mallets for yourself, and then the people involved, then it started rolling in that direction, and then all of us were pushing that anyway. But you happened to be in the front and making them. So I mean,
Right.
you were the top mallet player, a mallet company, Mike Balter Mallets, in the world,
Well, well,
right?
what I did is we know, as good looking as you may think you are, I'll put it that way,
Okay.
and that you are being hired not for your good looks.
Right.
You are being hired for your sound, and the question is, what is your signature sound? And what I tried to do was to expand the color palette for the mallet player. Because prior to me starting the company, you had soft, medium, and hard.
That's right.
And the reality is, both Musser and Deegan were making mallets out of necessity because they had to supply something with the instruments.
Right.
So when I came out, I made extra soft, very soft, medium hard. So I tried to expand that color palette and to give the player more choices so they can develop their own musical sound.
Yeah. And
Just
you
it just grew, and I mean, we were making a lot of mallets. At the end, we were making like 180,000 pair a year.
that's when you told me that in a recent conversation, I couldn't believe it. And I mean, I was on a research because I needed to know how many mallets there are out there, because as you remember, I had developed and patented a music stand
Right,
specifically for mallet instruments, and I had to convince the my in my presentation the stand companies that mallet players is a growing area, and mallet instruments is a much more growing than anything else right now. So I was looking around, and some companies were saying to me, "Well, people have a set of mallets and they stick with it. And how often do you break mallets?" I said, "But you don't understand. I had to make these because they're challenging me with." Why would we sell so many music stands for mallet players? And I, as a mallet player, I know the challenge. I know that the design I came up with and patented, that the stand sits on the frame of the instrument. It's not screwed on. It's not tightened on. It just sits on it, and it's totally adjustable. And now the music follows you. So if you're playing with a symphony, you don't have to stop the orchestra to move your instrument that has 5 music stands. You can actually put 5 of my stands right on the instrument, and it doesn't touch the notes. So I had to convince, because I didn't want to manufacture them myself. I said, I have way too many things to do. So finally, the company, now it happens to be Manhasset, I licensed it to them, and they're manufacturing it. Finally, it was all the questions like, how many mallet players could there possibly be? How many would they buy a year? How many instruments? And so I had to do all that research. So when I asked you, and I was curious, and when you said 180,000 pairs of mallets a year, so you really helped me on that one, because then I turned around and I said, you see, I didn't make this up. This is real. So then they were on board, and they kind of understood. I didn't blame them for not understanding, but I had to have real ammunition. So I was so happy to have known you this well to be able to ask you that question.
Right.
And you were making all of these different mallets, and you're continuously adding to that arsenal. And it's amazing to watch. And then you were making them, of course, for many other manufacturers, because they needed your expertise, and you could push them out in no time, right?
Yes, and if I developed a line of mallets for another company, we had an understanding and an agreement that I would not come out with the same line under the Mike Balter name.
Right.
Because it was important for me to maintain a good reputation. And I'm proud of the fact that I did have a good reputation within the music industry and as a player. And what many people found to be incomprehensible in today's world is that with all these companies, and they were all the major companies I had an agreement with, there was never a contract.
Wow. Beautiful. Yeah, and that's an important one, Mike, because I think as human beings are, and my father taught me this. I mean, I grew up, being an Italian in the village, and, my father never signed a contract for anything, but he always kept his word, and you knew. So that stuck with me. Your word, it was like when Maury said, take the vibes and pay for them. Then I gave him my word, and I paid for them as soon as I could.
Absolutely.
And everything else that you do, your word is your contract. Otherwise, if you have no word, then you're meaningless. And that's because anybody, even a contract, some people don't respect because they don't have a word.
Right.
And I'm pleasantly surprised that you didn't have a contract, that you were able to do that. That says a lot, Mike. Seriously.
And some of the companies that we made them for, which were big names.
Yes, that's fantastic. And now you can say you did it, right? And you set the tone, right?
And it's you. I never was one to sit on my laurels, and I was always wanting to give the player that another tonal color, let's say,
Yeah.
and to expand it, and not just to come out with another product. Let's say in the drumstick world, do we need another 5A drumstick?
Right.
You know, and the question is, you may not need another 5A drumstick, but maybe we need a better 5A drumstick. I don't know how they would do that, but
Yeah.
so that's the way I would always approach it. I'm not coming out with something new just to come out with something new, only if I could improve what was out there, or improve a different sound or offer a different sound. And it's, as I said, when we were making all those mallets, Judy never asked me again, do I know what I'm doing? As she did when she saw those 2,000 pieces of
That,
Ricky.
that's a great story, and I mean, you and Judy were a great team. And I sent you a photo of that what you sent us. This is about relationships and
Yes.
building long-standing relationships as when you're around. When Yola and I got married, I mean, you sent us this bowl that we still use in the kitchen
Yeah.
30 years later, Mike.
I know,
It's
I know,
still,
I know. And like you say with those relationships, um, there were so many business associates that I had or endorsees that became lifelong friendships. It went beyond business. And even now that I'm retired, almost 6 years, there's a couple of people that I still keep in touch with, and just to say hello and share our common interest of baseball or whatever it might be. So
yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's nice, um, to have those relationships.
Yeah, and just as important as the music, having your word, but um, having building relationships that are meaningful, that you feel really good about, and it's not. I mean, business is business. Of course, you have to put bread on the table. You have to you have to pay rent, all of that stuff. But throughout all this, who are we and what we do? That's important too. How we treat people, and you're always on the A list of that.
Oh,
There are a
thank
few people around like that, in my certainly in my world, and I know a lot of people feel the same way. Yeah, but I
and
want
it's the way I look at it is maybe I brought my parents up right.
to. That's
They sure taught me a lot. I always joke when I was 16 years of age, nobody had to tell me. I knew for a fact I had the dumbest parents in the world. By the time I was 18 and went to college, I was surprised how much they learned in 2 years. Because whatever they said, they were right. They were absolutely right.
oh yes, it's it, and that one doesn't change because
Right.
you know.
Right. I mean, as I get older, all those things my father would say to me make total sense now.
Of course.
Total sense.
Of
You know,
course. Oh yeah, yeah. And when your kids were young, of course, you look at them and they would look at you and they'd say, and you can see it in their eyes, how would you know? And classic. And that doesn't change. I don't think that will ever change. So we just have to get used to it. It's like when our kids were growing up, Yolan and I would have this understanding. So I just, I just walk away and know that one day it's going to come back and they'll understand that what they just said that they just learned, I told them 3 years before, or we told, or yeah, it's the same thing.
right.
It's
Absolutely.
funny.
But it's good. It's part of life, let's say.
Of course, of course. It's fantastic. And I mean, we can go on forever in this stuff, but I do want to thank you for not only your friendship and your time and doing this, but I really thank you for doing the world of and the percussion community such a great service of creating those mallets. I know you were doing it because you're really good at it and you're inventive, but I mean, the world is a better place. The mallet player, the mallet world is a much better place now. And thank you. I'm
Oh.
saying this for everybody, but I know. And I have all your mallets here, and I play them all the time, and all those different ones. I say, because if you hadn't done it, I would have probably had to do it. But
Ah.
thank you. Yeah. And on that note, I just want to say that, and thanking you for taking the time to do this, because we've been talking about doing this for a very long time. And I'm really happy that you finally gave me the pleasure and the honor to do it, because this is going to go down and it's going to stay. So I'm glad we had this
Oh,
conversation. Thanks. And as I always say,
thank you.
yeah, as I always say, to be continued.